Oh, welcome into the Russ Joy Show. I'm Russ Joy. Figured that out because you're smart. It's also the name of the show, and we've had tech issues all morning and apologies. That's all we do is offer our apologies, and that's honestly probably what the Flyers should offer to everyone who paid money to go watch the shit show that unfolded last night. I think an apology would actually go a pretty long way. You're not great. Last night was not great for your team, your town, your Philadelphia Flyers. Honestly, one of the more embarrassing efforts I think we've seen in quite a while. A game that started off with a lot of hope and a lot of promise ends up just kind of dying on the vine. Truly disappointing in a lot of ways, and we'll break it all down. And then, of course, as if that weren't enough, oh, no, don't worry, we got more. Sixers play tonight, and it feels like every time I'm positive about the Sixers, they pull a Travis Konechny and puke all over themselves in the game. So I guess I'll have to poo-poo on the Sixers today, reverse psychology it, so the Sixers can go pick up a win in Game 3. That series isn't over. Flyers series is over. Sixers, not so much. And we're going to talk about the Phillies, who got curb stomped by the former Philadelphia Athletics on Thursday night. That was not a great game either. Now, there's a lot to get into. There are a lot of comments over on YouTube especially. I think I saw some from X and from Facebook, so we'll get to a few of those. And then we have got to dive into the shit show at the OK Corral last night. And that is what happened at Xfinity Mobile Arena last night. All right, let's go out to the comments, and then we'll dive into everything going on in the world. Chris Freed over on YouTube. Does Russ still deny there will be two sweepings at the X this weekend? It will be a Mother's Day weekend double spring cleaning special. The Sixers are not getting swept. The Sixers are not getting swept. The Sixers are not getting swept. So no. Will the Flyers get swept? That is totally on the table. And what has become one of the more just upsetting ends of a series that I can remember in a while. That one is over. The rest of it, though, there's still some hope. Some hope is out there. As sure as the sun will shine, I can also guarantee that as soon as I pull up a Chris Freed comment, Ford will bitch and whine and moan. And then he'll text me, and then he'll leave me voice texts. So, I think, do I go? Let me know in the chat. Do I only pull up Chris Freed and not Ford? Do I pull up Chris Freed and Ford? You let me know, 610-632. Speaking of 610-632, I'm going on with John Marks at 11 o'clock. So when this show is over, we'll flip over to the Fanatic, and we'll go talk some Flyers over there as well. So prepare yourselves. We're buckle in. Buckle up, Buttercup. We're going for it. All right. Wyland Ertz is here with a good morning and a coffee. Made my coffee this morning. Made my espresso. I'm looking for positives today. I'm trying really hard. Flyers Purgatory says, this team cannot, under any circumstances, bring Mitch back next year. He has to be traded. There will be a natural regression with less overtimes and no 3-week break. Talk gonna nuke any value Mitch has. This, my friends, is what we call an overreaction. This cannot be the way that we approach talking about Matvei Michkov for the next few months. I will lose my shit. Can't have it. We have gone through an entire offseason of A.J. Brown drama. We don't need to go through that with Matvei Michkov. We'll talk about this later on. Michkov needs to really take a look in the mirror, and he's got to go into this offseason with a renewed sense of intrinsic motivation. He has got to go into this offseason ready to crush it, kill it in the gym, get his conditioning up, and then show up to camp and make Rick Tocchet look like a moron next year. That's what he should be saying to himself in his own mind. I'm going to prove why Tocchet was a dope for taking me off a power play unit, off of an already shitty power play. I'm going to prove why he never should have considered it. I'm going to show why the skill that I have is now matched by conditioning. We'll see if he does. See, this to me is a much bigger offseason where we learn about the character of Matvei Michkov than anything else. Because you would imagine that if you are trying to be an elite player in this league, which I still think he very much wants to be, you cannot go through the motions like he did last offseason. You get a mulligan. He's young. He was going into his second year. New coach. Let the foot off the gas pedal. It came back to bite him. in more ways than one. Guess what? You kind of get a blank slate next year. The one thing that you have to worry about, though, and this is the thing that Michkov is going to have a hard time with. If he had gotten off to a bad start with John Tortorella, and then Torts gets fired, and then you get Bradshaw, and then you have an offseason to prepare for the new coach, you could get a blank slate with Rick Tocchet. He won't hold against you whatever the issue was with Tortorella. The problem is you've made a very bad first impression on your coach in year one of that coach being hired. So now you're not getting carte blanche next year. You're already starting an uphill battle. The good news is that working on that uphill can help you burn fat and get in better shape. So that's actually not a bad thing for Matvei Michkov, perhaps. One could argue. I still firmly believe he is one of the most talented, skilled guys on the team. His conditioning sucks. He looked wildly out of place against the Penguins. He's had some good moments. He had moments in that series. He had moments in the Hurricane series. I have been, I think, as pro-Michkov as can be on this show. But the sycophants who think that he is infallible and has not done anything even remotely coming close to like underperforming, those people are out of their minds. We need to have a little bit of objectivity here. And Michkov was not great. So now you kind of reset the deck and you go into next year, hopefully, with a guy who is absolutely motivated to get the job done. That's what the Flyers need out of Matvei Michkov. Will he do it? I don't know. If we start seeing pictures surfacing on Instagram of him in Dubai and him like, you're allowed to live your life. But man, if he comes into camp next year, chiseled, ready to go, pissed off little Russian dude, that's a good thing. If he comes in and he looks like #FatVey, that's going to tell you all you need to know about the guy. It's going to tell you all you need to know about the player and his mentality. So hopefully, the guy that I think is in there, the guy that I think does want to be great, is going to ultimately be the one that you see next year. And I disagreed with Tocchet early in the season, but anybody who's watched these two series and doesn't come away with the thought that he doesn't look like he can keep up, they're lying to themselves. He can't keep up. Can he still execute a high-level pass? Can he still execute at a high level with a cross-ice pass? Yes. Should he still be on one of these godforsaken clusterfuck of a power play units? Yes, he should. Do I think Rick Tocchet has mismanaged the personnel on these power plays? You're damn right I do. Rasmus Ristolainen is not a power play defenseman. Not even close. That's a joke. Taking Michkov off of either power play, a joke. But this is also the same coach who pushed all the right buttons against Pittsburgh. And I will give Tocchet credit in that, like, when the series has been at 5-on-5 against Carolina, the Flyers have actually held up pretty well at even strength. The problem is, when the Flyers get power plays, they're more apt to giving up a shorthanded goal like we saw last night than they are to actually scoring on the power play. We've joked for the longest time. I mean, we're up to 5 or 6 years now of joking. If the Flyers could turn down the power play, that would be swell. I know, we'd actually like to decline the power play. Thank you. God bless. It's putrid. There's no excuse for it. We can have an argument about whether or not it's all just personnel-based. It's a different coach. It's a different head coach. It's a different power play coach. There's no excuse for it to be as bad as it is. How do you end up being such a god-awful power play unit and you still make the playoffs? Wild. I mean, seriously, if you think about it, if the Flyers even had a remotely average power play, the series against Pittsburgh probably goes 5 games. You are probably looking at least like a 2-1 deficit right now. But you at least pick up a game. I would say that you probably win game 2 if you have a competent power play. I would argue that if you had a competent power play last night, guess what? The game doesn't get away from you. I will say game 3 was alarming in that it was the first time that I felt like the team as a whole got really out of their game. I'm not saying quit, but they were certainly in their own heads. You could see it. And then that ultimately kind of manifested in the bullshit that we saw at the end of the game. Most notably, Travis Konechny getting into it with K'Andre Miller. An absolute fucking joke. We can get there in a little bit. I'm going to go back out to the comments. Then we'll come back around. Let's see. Greg Mondrankos here says, good morning, gang. Happy Friday. Happy Friday. Ford says, asked Ant if he still had Sixers in 7, and he ignored. Jim Cochran says, reality check on the Flyers. They're not in the same class as the top teams. Making it to the second round was a huge success. Need to add pieces in the offseason. A power play quarterback would be a great start. So the short version of this is that is true. 100%. Here's the issue that you run into. They are not at the same level as the top teams in the Eastern Conference. So that would be your Carolinas, your Buffaloes. If you want to put Montreal in there, you can. I would say Tampa, despite being out, would be a top team in the conference. One of very few teams in the East that could actually stack up against whoever comes out of the West. You don't have enough talent. You don't. The thing that the Flyers have to be careful about, though, is looking at even strength against Carolina as somehow being an endorsement of the guys that they have in the locker room right now. Oh, well, if we had a better power play, we could win this series. In theory, maybe. But is there anybody who really, truly, fundamentally believes that the Flyers, even with a decent power play, are a better team than Carolina? I would hope not, because that's not real. Are they better than the best of the West? No. Are they better than Buffalo? No. They have happened to have some exceptional goaltending this year that has kept them in games and, on occasion, flat out won them games. And I feel really bad for Dan Vladar. I do. Because against Pittsburgh, he had to be near perfect. Against Carolina, you give up 3 goals each in the first 2 games. Give up 4 last night. One is a weird carom off the boards behind you, and then it gets deposited into the net. Vladar has not lost you these games. If anything, he's been one of the only reasons that these games haven't become like 6 or 7 goal affairs. I feel bad for the guy. He's been exceptional, and his team let him down. They've let him down this entire series. There are 1 or 2 guys that I think more than anyone else have let the team down, but we'll get to that in a second. Landro says, Tocchet has already hurt Michkov's value, but make no mistake, there will be a lineup of teams that will be checking on his availability, just like when Tocchet butchered Keller. The Oats were smart. Will there be teams interested in Matvei Michkov this offseason? Yes. If there is a team that for some ungodly known reason offers you a 1C for Michkov, explore it. I'm not saying you should do it. I would not move Michkov in a deal for Austin Matthews, for example. I think that would be a stupid business. But I would fully expect the Flyers are going to have conversations around Austin Matthews if he's available. Would I trade Matvei Michkov for Brady Tkachuk? I don't know. Depends on what the rest of it looks like. Do I think the Flyers will check in on Brady Tkachuk? I do. Would I trade Matvei Michkov for Connor McDavid? Yes, I will drive him to the airport myself. I might actually drive him to Edmonton myself. But that's not going to be nearly enough to get Connor McDavid. There are levels to this. There are tiers to this, right? And the guy that you ultimately bring in has to be worth it. But again, this team wasn't willing to trade Matvei Michkov to go get a legitimate number 1 defenseman in Quinn Hughes. What makes you think that they're going to be willing to move him this offseason? Now, the idea that Tocchet has hurt Michkov's value, untrue. Here's where things get tricky. I remember way back when Morgan Frost and Joel Farabee, especially Frost, Torts had him in the Chateau Bow Wow, and Frost wasn't playing in games. And I remember saying to somebody in the Flyers organization, that's got to hurt trade value, right? Like, Frost not playing isn't a good look, right? Because then another front office looks at it and says, is it a character issue? Is it a work ethic issue? Because fundamentally, like, the guy is an NHL player. And I had somebody in the Flyers organization who may or may not have at least some influence on trades and or personnel decisions say to me, yeah, it doesn't help. That's one thing. There was never a question of whether or not Morgan Frost was in shape and had his head in the right place. Michkov kind of fucked himself this year. He did. And again, if you don't want to accept that, that's fine. But he did. And it really ultimately hurts the team now. Because if we had a Matvei Michkov on this team right now, operating at a high level, well-conditioned, right, making himself undeniable to get top 6 minutes and a yeoman's work on the power play, then guess what? Flyers maybe have a lead in this series. That's how much of a swing that would be, because ultimately he is, I still believe, one of your best, most skilled players. But he can't keep up. He just can't. And hopefully next year he will. And by the way, unless it's for a bona fide number one center or a bona fide number one defenseman, I'm not trading Michkov. Why would you? For all the excuses that some people like to make, oh, Zhetlachenko's still young. Okay, Michkov is still young. You don't move off a guy that has as much talent as he does. It's wild. I will tell you, there are people that I respect who have given up on Matvei Michkov. There are. There are people who know more about hockey or forgot more about hockey than I'll ever know. And they're like, yeah, he sucks. I'm like, he doesn't suck. He really screwed up last offseason. I think that a lot of these people are going to end up eating crow at some point. How soon, how long from now, I don't know. But I don't look at Matvei Michkov as being some bust. And by the way, if it turns out that Michkov sucks, right? Let's just say that the cynics are right. Fatvey sucks, right? Got no work ethic, no hustle. He's going to just balloon. Well, then it's kind of an indictment on the front office who drafted him, right? Like, then that kind of means you didn't do due diligence in figuring out what makes the kid tick. I still tend to believe that Keith Jones and Danny Briere did the requisite homework on the guy. And again, that's part of why I think he's going to ultimately be more like the player that people expected him to be than what he was this year. I don't think it's that complicated. Let's see. Where else are we? MJ Bruno says, guys, the Canes have been together for 7 years. Why are we acting shocked that a veteran team with a veteran coach is outworking the squad of literal 20-year-olds? It's fair. It's a fair point by MJ Bruno. Totally fair. It's because it's emotional. And I think a big part of this is just because there was so much enthusiasm and so much excitement coming out of the Penn series that for it to be one game away from a sweep in the next round, regardless of how you got there, game one was rough. They got steamrolled. They didn't have a lot of rest. Carolina was fully rested. That sucked. Game two, Travis Konechny screws up in overtime. That should have been buried. Should have been a tie series. Going into last night, by the way, last night, first period, I would argue, first 15 minutes or so of the first period last night, maybe the best 15 minutes the team has played the entire postseason. You could say that they had more opportunities, everything against Pittsburgh, but again, relative to the competition, 15 exceptional minutes against Carolina, to me, are better than 15 exceptional minutes against Pittsburgh in round one. But they didn't follow it up, and they allowed a goal. And then, of course, you had the Jamie Drysdale play, shorthanded goal, goes the other way. Disaster. Okay. Let me see. Scott Thompson says, if Michkov comes into next season in amazing shape and Tocchet is still playing him on the third line, Flyers will have to choose one. They better make the right choice. If Michkov comes into next season in shape, he'll play top 6 minutes. He might even be on the top line. I'm confident in that. Because, again, for better or worse, at some point your front office does look at it and go, yeah, this is a guy that we drafted high. I think that they're all kind of in lockstep. Michkov screwed up last offseason. He did. If you think that whatever happened this season is going to be held over his head so much so with prejudice that if he comes into camp in great shape next year and is tearing it up, that he's going to play third line minutes, well, then there's going to be a conversation with Tocchet. But again, Michkov has to do it. He's got to do the work. If he doesn't do the work, you're going to see third line minutes. And then you probably are going to hear legitimate rumors about trade possibilities. Flyers Purgatory says, it was the vets that looked like clowns last night, not young guys. Konechny, Dvorak, Drysdale, Coots, York were the guys committing penalties and embarrassing us at the end of the game, getting laughed at. I will pull Sean Couturier out of that. I will. I am not including Sean Couturier in this. Couturier has been a freaking godsend this entire postseason. Be honest with yourselves. Halfway through the season, most of you were ready to give up on Sean Couturier and beg for a buyout. He's been exceptional this postseason. He had one game late in the Penn series where it definitely looked like he was hurt. He wasn't throwing his body around as much. He has arguably been their best, or at certainly a top 3 forward against the Hurricanes in this series. So I'm going to pull him out of it. I will say this, though. When it comes to Travis Konechny, man, it's such a bad look. It is, and I slept on it last night because I was in the moment last night. I was kind of pissed off watching how the end of the game played out and watching Konechny get into it with Keandre Miller. There is nothing worse. And let me preface this. I think Travis Konechny is a good dude. In the time that I used to be down in the locker room post-game and everything, dude was always willing to stand up, answer questions. He was a young guy. That was back when Claude Giroux would go and take, way long showers to avoid having to answer questions from the media. Konechny was one of the guys as a young dude who would stand up and do it. So I have nothing negative to say about Travis Konechny. Seems like a decent human being, good guy. I liked the guy in the interactions I had with him. It's not a character assassination. But what happened at the end of the game last night, him trying to get into it with Keandre Miller when the game was very far over, that's some bullshit. I don't ride with that at all. It's stupid and it looks petty, and it also just, it's almost like you're playing a pickup game. Pick your respective sport. And you're getting your ass kicked. And it's bad. And you're outclassed. And maybe you think that the refs or whoever, if you want to put it in a league game or something, the refs are against you, you're not getting any of the calls. And you're frustrated and you just kind of want to lay into somebody. Commit a hard foul, whatever. That's one thing. What happened at the end of this game was fucking embarrassing. And there's no way to look at it and say, all right, I get what's the value add to trying to get into it with Keandre Miller late in game 3? There's no value add. You're already getting your ass kicked. You're already down by multiple goals. And by the way, the time is ticking away. And oh, by the way, Travis Konechny had the game on his stick at the end of game 2 in overtime, didn't execute. Had an opportunity very early in game 3 to set the tone, didn't execute. Right? It sucks. Good dude. Not an $8.75 million player. Just isn't. Hasn't been. If you go back to old episodes of Snow the Goalie, when his contract was coming up, I said if you're really committed to a rebuild, he's got to be the first one to go. He had value. There was reason to believe you could have gotten something legitimate for him back in terms of picks and prospects. And they chose to double down on him. Because in theory, he is very much an emotional leader on that team. They go as he goes. The downside is he's not a goal-scoring threat. And the goals that he scores don't tend to be in these critical moments. This is a guy who at the somewhere around the Olympic break sat at his locker post-game while the Flyers very much looked like they had no shot of making the playoffs and lamented and said out loud in front of cameras, "I'm just sick of missing the playoffs." And then his team went on a heater. Maybe that was the thing that got them going. But the team went on an absolute heater. But we were talking about guys like Owen Tippett. We were eventually talking about guys like Tyson Forster and Porter Martone. We talked about Denver Barkey and Alex Bump. We talked about what seemed to be a little bit of an improvement in the play of Matvei Michkov. Christian Dvorak was executing. Trevor Zegras was executing at a high level. The one guy that you should look to as the $8.75 million guy on the team to put the biscuit in the basket is Travis Konechny. He didn't do it. He just didn't do it in critical moments. And that's where the frustration lies. Because in my sport playing days, where I was never particularly great at anything, I'm not going to sell you on anything, all right? I was a rat. I tried to get under the other team's skin. I tried to piss them off. In the soccer playing days, I used to try to flat tire dudes, tug on jerseys, you tug on shorts, you get in their face, you piss them off, you get somebody to commit a dumb foul, try to help your team out. That was me. I loved doing that. I wasn't viewed as the guy who's expected to score the goals. I wasn't viewed as the guy who's expected to perform at a high level. I was, if you will, like a fourth-line mucker grinder. I was like a fourth-line agitator. Travis Konechny's an $8.75 million a year guy, expected to play top-line minutes and net somewhere probably between 30 and 35 goals. He led the team in points this season. That's great. You need him to be more of a goal scorer. You have enough dudes who are capable of completing passes and setting up shots. But he's not a killer when it comes to being a goal scorer. And unfortunately, this team needs that desperately. Tyson Forster last night looked great in the first period. Exceptional in the first period. And then what happened? Oh, look at this. We got somebody on Facebook putting, what is this? Now we're going to block that person. God bless. I hope you have a great day out there, whoever you are. Let me see. I think I can take, what in the world? That's weird. The Vodafone. All right, I think we can take that down. Okay. The real issue is, it is very, very frustrating to watch Konechny try to agitate and instigate at the end of a game where he hasn't factored in any meaningful way. And when he had an opportunity, a golden opportunity to get this one started and to wash away the downside and the sour taste of what happened at the end of game 2. And again, I like the guy. I think that he is a good locker room dude. I think the players in that locker room like him. But you have to execute at some point. You're a highly paid player. We would expect anybody who's getting paid that percentage of the cap to perform. He's not doing it. And that's where the frustration lies. By the way, he's got a no movement clause. So for all the people who want to fantasy GM their way into getting off of Konechny's contract, guess what? It ain't going to happen. I don't see him moving on. And here you go. Like Joseph DeAngelis is right. He led the team with only 68 points. It's not good enough. Correct. I mean, I've pointed out the fact 68 points is kind of disastrous to be your leading scorer. You have dudes on other teams putting up over 100 points. Now, they are among the best players in the league. 68 points led the team. I mean, that also kind of speaks to the talent on this team. You can make the argument that, well, it speaks to the fact that there's a nice balanced attack on this team. Maybe. You need stone cold killers. I think with a nice offseason, with a strong offseason, Porter Martone's going to bulk up. He's going to be a goal scoring threat. Tyson Forster's going to have an offseason to get healthy. He'll come back ready to go. And he could very well be a 35 to 40 goal scorer. Owen Tippett will come back and I don't know. He's as Jekyll and Hyde as it gets. But he would be a goal scoring threat. Tippett would thrive in this series against Carolina. It's unfortunate he hasn't been available. Am I going to fault him for it? No. Am I going to call him soft like people on Flyers Facebook groups were doing the last few days? No. That one's the actual one that I think is the most upsetting, is that we didn't get to see what Tippett looked like against Carolina. I think that would have told you a lot. But he's clearly been battling some injuries, so what are you going to do? Ford says, Flyers were aggressive. It felt like they could score at any time. But when they didn't, the game effectively ended there. Yes, the thing that killed the Flyers last night was the 5-on-3. You had a minute and a half at 5-on-3. An opportunity to get a quick goal and then maybe pick up another one on the power play, flip the script on the game, and win game 3 at home, and then go into Saturday with a chance to tie the series. Their inability to get anything set up with the man advantage is so unbelievably frustrating. It should not be this hard to get a decent power play setup. These guys just look like they are so far in their own heads. They're looking for the perfect pass. No one is getting into greasy areas. This is actually where I think the frustration that I have with Konechny's play really comes to the forefront. Konechny should be the agitator in front of the net. He should be the rat scurrying around the net looking to deposit a deflection, to get a rebound and put it in. He's not doing it. Now, Jim Cochran says it's not TK's fault Flyers overpaid him. He's a nice second to third line player. Management paid him to be something he's never going to be. I did note before, Can't fault a guy for taking $8.75 million. All right, let me see if there's anything else over in the comments that I wanted to get to. Let's see. Great Scott over on YouTube says, Talk said it best. We should have been up 3-0 at the end of the first period. After the third goal, we looked defeated in the game and the series. That is correct. I mean, yeah, you're talking about hitting posts. They probably should have had a 3-0 lead. At worst, a 2-0 lead. Game flipped on its head. And again, 5-on-3, that sucked. Power play after, sucked. That was it. Scott Thompson asks, would you ask Konechny to waive his no movement clause? One, I don't think the Flyers would. Two, I don't know if he would want to waive it unless he's going to a legit contender. But I don't know. The thing that always kind of sticks in my head, and this is something that we've seen over the years in sports, when you've got a young family, one thing you don't want to do is upend everything and go. Now, I don't know Travis Konechny and his family personally, so maybe this doesn't apply to them. But I know with my kids, would I want to uproot my entire family to go move across the country or go move into another country up to Canada or what? Probably not. And by the way, while you can't fault a player for taking a big money contract, you also can't fault the player if he and his agent were able to negotiate a no movement clause. The Flyers gave it to him. And if they ultimately get frustrated that he won't waive it, you shouldn't have given it to him. You know? Let me see. Oh, God. There was some... It looks like there was arguing about Cutter Gauthier in the comments. We are going to avoid that, my friends. Joseph D'Angelo says, Russ Tocchet admitted he does not have the right personnel on the power play, and yet Michkov is still not on the first power play unit and not out there on 5-on-3. How is that developing a young player? This is where I do have the issue with Tocchet's deployment of Michkov. That is malpractice. There is no defending Michkov not being on the top power play unit. Oh, he sucks defensively? Guess what? You have a man advantage. I think you'll be fine. 5-on-3? What are we doing here? Again, guy who I think has the best vision creativity on the team. It's probably him and Zegras together. He's got to be out there, and he's not. Okay. The wild thing to me is that they've kind of done this thing where they're punting it to next season. But you have to make adjustments now. Let's see. I like this from Hockey Purgatory. Russ, I do think one of Austin Matthews, Quinn Hughes, Robert Thomas, or one of the restricted free agents like Bedard, Fantilli, or Carlson will be on the team next year. All right, let me take two off the table. Chicago will match for Bedard. That's a pipe dream. They don't like Robert Thomas. He will not be on this team. Quinn Hughes, Minnesota, I don't see trading Quinn Hughes. Could he be here when he becomes a free agent? Maybe. Will they be interested in Austin Matthews? They will, without a doubt. I would actually say that the Flyers will be among 3 or 4 teams that you will ultimately see get to the finish line and have a chance to cross the finish line and get Austin Matthews. I do. I think that they'll be very much involved. The question ultimately becomes, how many assets do you have to move? Here's the thing. I would rather the Flyers offer sheet Fantilli. I would be fine with giving up the 4 first-round picks because, in theory, if you're a playoff team, I don't really care about the late first-round picks. I genuinely don't. You have Toronto's pick probably next year, unprotected. Cool. Love that. That's great. Awesome. If you move Erasmus Ristolainen this offseason and you can get a first for him, guess what? Now you've replaced one of the other picks that you might theoretically have to give up. That's fine. I would much rather go after Fantilli. He's young. He fits a need. I think has higher upside long-term. That, to me, is the move. Will they be in on Matthew? Sure. Here's where it gets really interesting. Play this one out for a second, because I got Bundy and I actually off camera after the game. We went back and forth about the package for an Austin Matthews. And to me, or maybe it was Ant. I don't remember. Or maybe it was all of us. I don't remember. But Toronto, if Toronto decides that they're going to tear it down, they're going to start over again next year, they're going to want their pick back for next year because that very well could end up being a top 5 pick if they're trying to reset things, right? They're going to want their pick back, and Boston's not going to give them their 2028 pick back. So if you're the Flyers, That might be the most enticing asset anyone could offer up, is their first-round pick to them. What are the other pieces that have to go if you're going to try to get Austin Matthews? Would I be fine with giving up a potential top 5 pick if it meant you don't have to move a Martone or a Michkov? Yeah. You put Austin Matthews on this team, do they have a chance to get past Carolina? Sure. They're an exponentially better team, cascading effect. You're way better up the middle. Cool. Do you win a Stanley Cup? I don't know, probably not. But you're certainly in a better position. And you would theoretically be in a better position if you wanted to, I don't know, try to woo Quinn Hughes in free agency in a year or so. Yeah, I mean, then you make the move for Austin Matthews. But if it ends up having to be Toronto gets their first-round pick, and it's your first-round pick, and it's a Michkov or a Martone, and it's like an Oliver Bonk, then no, that's ridiculous. That's ludicrous. That's what you offer up among a couple of other things for Connor McDavid, not for Austin Matthews. That's ridiculous. Okay. Anyway, there we are. Let's see. Chris says, you only give up 4 first-round picks for a surefire Hall of Famer. Otherwise, in a salary cap league, you're just trying your chances. I don't agree with that at all. No, I don't agree with that. Because that implies that you are going to be exceptional at drafting late in the first round. Because if you're a playoff team and you're trying to be a Stanley Cup contender, that means that you're picking really, really well, somewhere in that 22 to 26 range. I'm not exactly sure that the Flyers are going to be great at that, so no. Okay. We'll come back to the Flyers on Monday because Flyers are back at it on Saturday, and we're going to have to... I'll be down there for the Press Row Show. And by the way, we are going to do a Snow the Goalie radio next Wednesday, I think. I don't know which location yet, so I will absolutely let you know sooner or later. Okay. Okay. I got 5 minutes left in the show. I haven't gotten to the Sixers or the Phillies, and then I got to go jump on 97.5. So, sorry, everybody. This is my fault. Tonight, Sixers back at it with the New York Knicks. I still don't know, and I don't think as of recording we have any insight into whether or not Joel Embiid is going to play tonight. The most recent thing that I saw was last night that Embiid was listed as questionable for Game 3. I think regardless of whether or not Embiid plays, I do expect the Sixers to go out and win tonight. I think that there was enough in Game 2 to show you that this team can absolutely win a game against the Knicks. Quentin Grimes is ultimately, to me, going to be the X factor. If Embiid's not in the lineup, Quentin Grimes has to go for 20+. You have to have one other guy who can put up a 20+ point performance. Maxey you will expect to get 30, 35+. Edgecombe sits somewhere in that 15 to 18 range. Paul George somewhere in the 18 to 24 point range. If Quentin Grimes can get the job done, 20+, cool. You feel pretty good about the opportunity to win the game tonight. If Embiid is back, and if Mitchell Robinson's illness or whatever is still going on, guess what? You're going to have a massive advantage on the interior, and I think you win the game going away. I still think the Sixers can win both Game 3 and 4, and then it's a best-of-3 series, and you ultimately have to try to win a game at Madison Square Garden. I am not giving up hope on the Sixers yet. Now, if Embiid plays tonight and he looks like the Embiid of Game 3 against Boston, you're losing this game. You're down 3-0 and it's over. If Embiid comes back, looks pretty decent, I think you win. If Embiid doesn't come back, I think you're still able to figure out a way to win. So that's where I'm at there. I do need to point out, though, and I hate having to go back to this because I know how frustrating it can be, watching Jared McCain light it up for the Thunder is so upsetting on so many levels. I get that the guy could be hunted defensively. I fully get it. But he's playing for the best team in the Western Conference, if not in the entire league, the reigning champion Oklahoma City Thunder. He had 18 points in 18 minutes last night. Now, you can make the argument, Oklahoma City is an exponentially better team, Russ. Of course he's going to have open looks. When you think about what the Sixers lacked more than anything in Game 2, it was one other dude to come off the bench and put up 15 or 20 points. Quentin Grimes didn't get the job done in Game 2. Jared McCain very easily could have. And what's the other thing? Tyrese Maxey needed a few minutes here and there. Shouldn't play 47 minutes. Should probably play 42, 43. Get him a couple of breaks. Who could have come in and run the offense? Jared McCain. He went 4 of 5 from beyond the arc last night for Oklahoma City, 7 of 11 from the field, an 81.8 true shooting percentage. This is the guy that Daryl Morey thought he sold high on. See that sneeze that I just had? I'm still sick about the trade. Sick, I tell you. It's a bummer. By the way, now I'm pretty sure Phightin Words did an episode. They might still be on. By the time this show ends, they still might be doing Phightin Words because for some reason they continue to do the show at the same time as this show, which isn't very smart. But the Phillies last night, horrific effort. Got blown out 12-1 by the former Philadelphia Athletics. Not only did they get blown out, but Andrew Painter got lit the hell up. And I am not saying that you give up on Andrew Painter, right? But I did kind of question the last few years, like, man, he's this total untouchable. Okay. You're letting Ranger Suarez go, due in part to this belief that Andrew Painter is going to be an ace. Now, it's not as if the guy's 29. So I'm not that worried. But 3 2/3 innings, 7 hits allowed, 8 earned runs, 3 walks, 2 strikeouts. That ain't inspiring a lot of confidence. Here's the biggest issue that I have right now in Philadelphia. I'm not ready. I'm kind of ready for the Flyers to be done their series and to get my Knights back, sure. I'm not ready for the Sixers to be done because I'm not ready for this show to have to become a Phillies show with like a couple of off-season news and notes from the other teams. Okay? That's where things get tricky. But I do have to run because now I have to go hop over on 97.5. So I'll be back on Monday with the Russ Joy Show. I'll be on the Press Row Show on Saturday. So do me a favor if you haven't done so already. Go subscribe to the Snow the Goalie channel. I'll talk to you guys 5:30 pregame, 6 o'clock puck drop for Game 4 of Flyers Hurricanes. And then, of course, with this show, back on Monday. This has been the Russ Joy Show. I've been Russ Joy. You knew that already because you're smart. So that's the name of the show. Go follow every account that this does the clips on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and YouTube. And you can go subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcasts. All right. I got to go. Everybody have a great rest of your day. Have a fantastic Friday. Talk to you on a marvelous Monday here on the Russ Joy Show.